Because I've been very quiet.
That's been silent.
No one's been able to hear us.
Nope. Sorry. It's alright, it's on, it will be, the recording will have the audio, so.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Should we explain what just happened there?
Audio is not working, lovely viewers, so welcome to one viewer. Yeah, sorry about that. Basically, I turned down the volume so they didn't get our hubbub before the thing. We can turn it back on. A lot of things to remember when you say on a podcast, it turns out. Anyway, sorry about that. But it's recorded on the camera, so I'll re-upload. For all you lovely people who just missed that. So don't worry, our goal is not.
Should we just continue?
I think
Let's just do that.
So what are you going to say?
So I think with her character, I believe it was written in to be so expressive and so over the top. The entire film, for me, I find it really interesting contrast. Every character seems to hate every other character in this film. Friendship seems to be a very rare thing in it, but there's this real camp, sort of baroque aesthetic coming from the setting and everything. And I think she is there as a primal sort of piece or primary piece of the opera. So she has that eccentric sort of sensibilities within her. I think that's, I think it came across as deliberate for me at least. But apparently Argento really despised Christina Marshalik, who played Betty, because she had been a model in Italy before the film. She was only 18 and apparently, according to Argento's side, she came on and so was going, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that. And
she did do quite a lot.
And especially when you get to the one of the final scenes when the entire room is on fire and you learn from her side of things that the room was really on fire.
Oh my god.
And there's about 4 or 5 different takes of that. And Argento was just sort of going, no, you're being ridiculous, it's only about a fire. And
She's got some points.
I think she has some points on this one, yeah.
Do you know what else she wouldn't do?
There's a couple of nude scenes that were written in originally in true Argento sort of way, but she came out saying, no, I don't think it needs this, and so he had to rewrite it, which,
There was some, I think there was, maybe, I don't know, maybe I've just been like numbed by the number of Giallo I've watched, but the gender politics I think there's so much more to discuss, but they're still there. But what was interesting in this one, well that's interesting, playing into that someone, an actress is turning around and saying no to something that's quite voyeuristic and problematic and exploitative. But there's also a line in the film as well which stood out when they're in the car talking, and she says something like, men always presume when a woman has a problem it's about love, which I thought was like a really nice, crisp line. So it's quite interesting, and I think you can see a sort of, it felt more, I think, we're talking about how it sort of feels in the modern, it felt more modern in many senses, and I think that's possibly one as well.
I think, when you look back at the older sort of 60s, 70s Giallo, there are a few moments in all of them, especially Your Vice, for example, you sit there and you kind of go, oof, you wouldn't get this today. I think that this came from a reaction towards more American sort of slashers that went more in on the gore and the violence than these sort of hypersexualized sort of films as previous Giallo had been. So I think there's a lot of reaction of Argento going, maybe I should try to fit into the modern climate a bit more.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, we could keep talking about the way it goes as well, because it starts off in that sort of it's very gritty, I think it's something that feels very strong. Just even looking at, I remember when I was looking at screenshots of the film, you just see them, and because a lot of other Giallo, it's all these like bright colours, and it's very like supernatural, and even Suspiria is kind of like Disney-esque. This one, it really feels like something like, I think something like Friday the 13th that comes after it, right? It's got a very, just the whole look of it is very...
it's very sort of dingy.
Yeah.
It's incredibly crisp, and especially in this 2K remaster of it. It looks great, but yeah, the film has that grimy, sort of nasty, sort of muted colours to it, where previous Giallo had gone for the eccentricities and more about the visual spectacle. This one feels like it's trying to create a really cold environment within the film. I think you're meant to feel very unwelcome when you're watching this. But that was director of photography was a guy, Ronnie Taylor, who is a British cinematographer, filmed Gandhi, and Dario Argento's 1998 film The Phantom of the Opera, which this film really hammers home how much it's homage to that.
I think it especially struck me when his face is like,
Yeah.
he's like my eye.
Doing that really camp sort of overacting.
Yeah, it's so overacting. Still not over the watch. Direct every line. Yeah, but then the ending is just totally batshit. Like when that's definitely a Sound of Music reference,
Yeah,
right?
it's
It looks so much like it.
I mean, I think that's one way you could read it. I read a long piece online which was sort of defending those final 10 minutes, going, oh, it represents her freedom and escaping the clutch of the killer, and by leaving the opera and going to the open spaces. I was sort of going, no, it's just Dario Argento. Let's wrap this up.
To him, that's normal.
There is a real trend within Giallo where they can build up these fantastic climaxes, and quite often they'll just go on 5 or 10 minutes too long. Say in the case of Year of Ice again, where they just go, we have got a lot to tie up, so let's just
push him off the cliff.
Oh.
Push all loose ends off the cliff.
That's exactly it.
I did think the last 10 minutes of that though is sort of like, in some ways it got quite boring. So it was, I don't know, it was ridiculous, but it's also like, oh, this has just gone on too long now.
It does have that feeling. It feels as if he's too desperate to give a finalised answer.
Yeah.
And that plot twist they have, and literally I think there's 6 minutes or so left in the film where it goes, that wasn't his body in the fire, it wasn't human at all.
And then shot of him like, whoa! I love those like moments where they do that in films, and you're meant to believe that the killer just had this dummy prepared, just like,
Well, I guess that's
It's
all
all
being backstage for an opera hall. That's not pushing the boundaries of logic too far.
It's on the cusp, I think. But
it's on the cusp, but it's more believable than a few things that happen in this.
I mean, I also like how, given how completely insane the ending is, that it almost like overshadows how weird the way they figure out who the killer is. It's like, I love the way the director's like, I have this. I have this idea, and you're gonna love it. You just gotta keep going, and then she's just like thinking, what's this idea gonna be?
Yeah.
She's like, ravens!
That's because we're showing the killer attacking a room full of ravens at one point, and then that sets up, that's his downfall, because through one piece of, the very first shot in the film being the raven's eye, which I think is repeated a good 3 or 4 times throughout the film, you sort of know they're going to come back in, and then, I feel they had the shot down for that, and they sort of went, how are we going to get a raven loose inside of here? And
That's funny. It's a cool shot.
I was going to ask about like the budget for these films and how they get those sort of sets and doing that thing crashing through the stage and like how have they done that?
So this film was at the time Dario Argento's highest budget of $8 million, which there's an article I was reading about it by Alan Jones, who's a great Giallo expert, and he was saying Argento was pretty much revered as the Italian Scorsese when this was released. But in that same interview, Argento came out and said, this is like Suspiria, I'm just using all of the equipment this budget can buy. So he built up such a name by getting Italian cinema over to America that his budget started to increase, and you can see that with his older films where they'll be fairly subdued, they maybe have a few locations, a lot of it is shot on city streets, and then by the time this comes out, he's done Deep Red, he's done Suspiria, he's really sort of a household name, at least in Italy and horror communities in America. So yeah, this was a case of him finally being able to go for that grand scale.
And how does that compare to the budgets of previous ones? Because even this one felt big, but even Suspiria they've basically made a whole set, right? And
yeah, I believe Suspiria was a couple million less. But when you actually think about that film, there are maybe 3 or 4 sort of locations within it. I think they had Rent Free Dance Academy, which even then there are a few main rooms that they sort of reuse over again. But yeah, but then his budgets would keep increasing as he went on, and actually as I was saying, this film paid so much homage to Phantom of the Opera. I was looking up because the second version of Phantom of the Opera he made, where the Phantom isn't disfigured but was an orphan raised by rats who becomes obsessed with the opera singer. Shot by the same guy again, Ronnie Taylor, but that had 10 million on its budget, so I think he just became such a cult director that people were willing to fund his frequency
might have been his downfall as well, potentially.
I think, yeah, that is a really good point. I was thinking that watching this, because he had done prior to this Inferno, which was the sequel to Suspiria. So when that was 82, Tenebrae 83, and when he announced Tenebrae, everyone went, oh, it's the final chapter. But he went back to Giallo for that because he hated filming Inferno. But that was also a case where he was sort of told, do what you want and give full creative reign. I think he worked best in the Giallo sort of sphere purely because there were certain rules he had to follow, and this is opera is a pretty far deviation from some of them. He's allowed to indulge himself a bit more.
I think it's an interesting trend in cinema and probably art in general. Well, yeah, about how not necessarily, but often people best work when they're constrained. You know, I think it's an interesting trend, and when people are just given, because I think those boundaries and barriers force you to be quite creative. So it's interesting seeing even someone like Argento. I mean, maybe not just that, but seemingly given complete autonomy, just sort of. It's not just his vision, I suppose. It's more the process and the overcoming the challenges and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess you don't have to be as creative, sort of go, we get a shot, we've only got so much. I mean, this was a guy who, on Bird of a Crystal Plumage, he's always been quite excessive in the way that he's just gone after the perfect visual. So in that film, there's a scene where a guy falls out a window, and for that, Argento just threw a camera out the window, and pretty much got told by the studio, we're not going to fund another one of your films. But it went on to a big success, so they did, yeah.
I love the balls of that.
That was his first feature as well. He had writing credits on Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time. Not Once Upon a Time. What was Once Upon a Time? Yeah. And yeah, he just went for it and became sort of an auteur director. And I think having that reputation from your first film, as I was saying in last week's podcast, this is pretty much the end point of where Argento goes from being. I mean, this one has laughable moments, but for the most part, it's fairly well put together. I think there's a good film in there with some fairly strange choices, but pretty much everything out of this is at best okay, and at worst Dracula 3D.
That's a good way of putting it. I also wanted to talk about I thought the cinematography was really interesting in this one, because it was interesting, we've already kind of touched on it, but with, is it Mara, the actress at the start?
Yeah.
Mara, yeah. So it was interesting, like we're talking just about how sometimes barriers can force creativity. It's interesting how the barrier of one of your main actresses just not being in it forced that very interesting POV style. But I think that POV style is repeated a lot in the film. I've just noticed through reading your reviews and watching films that POV is a real sort of almost trope in these films.
Yes.
It's often killer. In this one, it felt like it was used so much in this film with.
Mm-hmm. But I would say that really falls into the whole switch on voyeurism, because it's always usually the POV is the killer and the killings are happening away from wherever the protagonists are, and that's sort of to let you see what they're going to discover, and that's sort of a grinder element. In this one, you know the killer is there and he's forcing Betty to watch, so you go through her eyes and view the killings firsthand. It's a really interesting switch on the genre that Argento really helped popularise, and I think it makes the film quite a bit scarier than I think a lot of those previous ones, where it's the murder mystery, because there's still the mystery element to this, but it's much more rooted in let's make you uncomfortable with what you're seeing.
Yeah, because in this one, with the murder mystery element to it, in the other ones I've liked to guess who it is, but in this one I actually had I really wasn't sure.
Yeah.
It felt less important, that aspect of it, trying to lead you down different paths as to who it is.
Yeah, and I think that's because you're a lot more invested in Betty than a few of the Giallo protagonists we've had so far, especially in Argento's work, where I can feel they're more plot device to sort of go, need to uncover this to find out this, and it's about that storyline. And this one is you're watching it and how unpredictable the killer's moments when he chooses to strike are. I think it's all about that constant fear on edge of just get through this. And I also think the killer's identity in this one is a little bit underwhelming. I think compared to the other ones where you sort of go, oh, that makes sense because they have this and there's something a bit weird in there. In this one, it turns up and you sort of go, oh, right. I think there's a lot less done with characterization in this, and whether that's meant to represent a slightly sort of narcissistic or cold edge to Betty's character, because even the guy that she's supposedly in a relationship with in it is treated very offhand and sort of matter-of-fact way, so maybe you're meant to go and sort of go, oh, because the police officer has been, or the killer has been in a lot of scenes before, but you're not given much to go off. And I think I can see what Argento was trying with that, but personally I don't think it really paid off, and I think that's why the ending feels the way that it does.
That's why.
Well,
not the rolling around the grass, pushing the kisses away. That was fun.
Yeah, that bit was fine. That would have made sense.
That's so weird. I kind of loved it. In a way, no, not love, that's way too strong. I was just so this is fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Just all of that was ridiculous. And then she was crawling around. It's like, where and what?
Yeah.
I love flowers.
Yeah,
Some lizard. Just run, go.
Be free.
Be free. So bizarre. The other thing that was really bizarre that I wanted to talk about was the brain that just keeps appearing.
Yeah.
Really interesting. I quite liked it in a way, but I'm not sure I understand.
I guess it's meant to be. I don't know if that feels like creative rain gone too far. So I think it's just meant to be, because they play a similar thing for heartbeats and sort of shots and
I
sort of thing.
thought that was interesting.
I like that more than I like the brain. I felt less disconnected when that happened than when the brain pops up and tightens.
So wriggles around.
Yeah. I feel like
come on, we've all been there. Running around, brain's just oh!
Jesus, yeah. Yeah, that's a especially strange one. I mean, it's not the strangest thing in the film. Besides the ending, the music in this is really quite something.
I remember when it first came in, it's oh, wow. Given we've been blessed with these goblins, these beautiful goblin skulls, it's just
Well, the thing is, I also think it's made more jarring by you've got the classical opera, then you've got
Yeah.
bright, really interesting kind of ambient score that pops up certain notes, and then the first killing happens, and it's this sort of 80s thrash metal Guns N' Roses sort of style band. You kind of go, okay. So I decided to look into that and into your Dario Argento, where he described what he was saying. A lot of the film was about opera, and I wanted something that didn't sound like opera, so I chose heavy metal. That was all he had to say on the matter.
I mean, he's subtle. You gotta give him that. The music really didn't work for me.
No, it really doesn't.
It's one of those things where, I think in Suspiria is so iconic, obviously. And even in a lot of the other ones, it just feels so unique and original and fits. I don't know, it just felt like it didn't land at all.
It's especially interesting for this one just how little it lands, because so many of Argento's films rely on music by, say, Goblin, Ennio Morricone, to create that sense of atmosphere that drives the film. Here, you've got 3 really different soundtracks pushed together, and I don't think they ever mesh.
No.
Because even in that final section, the sound music section, as we really preferred it earlier, where it's got the ambient music, and then Ian Charleston's character, director Marco, leans out the window and shouts, "The killer's here, run," and it just goes thrash metal.
I didn't even think that. I was so swept up in the moment, I didn't even notice that. But
yeah.
I laughed at the line. I forgot about the music. I was probably drowned out the music with my laugh.
It just feels especially weird with the idyllic scenery.
I was just imagining her just like having a little stroll in the woods, and then he's just like so like 0 to 100 so quickly.
That feels like the point that Ian Charleston gave up with this. He's shouting out the window, but he's half shouting.
Yeah.
This is my final
killer's
scene.
here. Run.
I did think that he was probably my favourite part of the film, at least character-wise. I really love the director, Marco, in this. I mean, Argento wrote him as a complete stand-in for himself, because Marco was a horror director famed for his violent films. Marco put on an unloved version of Rigoletto, so did Argento. Argento tried to get a show of Macbeth off the ground, which obviously Marco does in this. And it was also, he's criticised for the violent content of his films, and that's something really explored in Tenebrae with the horror author Peter Neal. So his entire character is Argento going, what if I was in one of my films? I just love that. I love the audacious nature. But Argento did get a version of Macbeth on production eventually in 2015. It's set in World War I, it's extremely gory, and it has vampires in it.
Well, there you go.
Oh wow,
We have a large budget.
I think he did have a fairly large budget for that.
Checks out.
It's available on DVD.
Oh man, I actually really want to see that.
Yeah,
Have you seen it?
Something else.
Oh, wow. It's interesting talking about Argento sort of having himself in it. This film feels very meta in nature. I mean, it's an opera. It's like behind the scenes of an opera. So that in itself is quite, it's a film about opera. It's sort of play within the play kind of thing. But then there's also we've already mentioned the way the needles being forced to watch is that inverted voyeurism. It's this kind of commentary with his old films and with the community and having himself in it, kind of. It feels like a nice playground to explore a lot of that meta ideas.
Yeah, and although we're discussing potential self-indulgence in this film, I feel like with all those elements at play, we could have ended up something a lot messier. I think the film, it has that completely ridiculous nature, and it is just sort of Argento trying every new toy he's got with his budget. So I think it came out surprisingly restrained for where it could have gone. But yeah, the metafiction element, it's really explored well in Tenebrae, and this almost feels like some leftover ideas that he perhaps had, and again, it feels bizarrely angry with his whole no one loved my opera when I did it, so I can make a film where I kill everyone in the opera.
Still salty about that.
Yeah.
You got his 2015 up there. Maybe he's content now. Maybe that's why he's stopped. Oh, he's still going actually, isn't he?
Is it?
Yeah. He's
Well,
got his
he had a Kickstarter recently.
Iggy, no, what's
Oh yeah, that was this
Eddie, is that Iggy Pop?
Iggy Pop, yeah, it was a film called The Sandman that was meant to be a return to Giallo with Iggy Pop in it, or a remake of Bird of the Crystal Plumage, which just, no.
Don't need it.
I feel if the remake's gonna happen, there should be someone else trying their own vision.
Why would he remake his own film?
Because it's a really good film, and I think
He
he
just wants more
might
people to
he
see
might
it.
be like, oh yeah, remember this? So he'll do the Disney thing where we'll get a different Argento every year.
Yeah. So maybe he'll do the opposite and be like animated. Start animated stuff.
Just trying to think.
Thoughts? Yeah, go on.
Something else we said about the film when we were watching it was the slow-mo in it that hadn't been in any of the other films. Is that just like a technical thing that it wasn't available to them to do before?
So his first real use of slow-mo came in Four Flies on Grey Velvet, where he has an incredibly gratuitous scene where the killer gets decapitated at the end, and it's all shot in like super slow mo. He just got the camera up. So he's played around with it before, but yeah, there's
So that was a new toy though, the slow-mo.
a new toy. Yeah.
I really admire the way he just does things because he can.
Yeah. I think that's partially why I love his films so much. I mean, Suspiria really pushed the unpredictability of it and just flew in the face sort of how far you can suspend your disbelief. But yeah, he's always had that kind of, you can tell he's had a lot of fun making it, and he's just wanted to try everything he can. For me, in this film, I think my favourite point of Argento, so just being Argento comes with where Daria Nicole's character is. I love that whole sequence before when the police officers outside. I think it's fairly restrained for Giallo. It builds, the threat of violence is there.
Yeah.
And then when it does come, it's so sudden and it's so unpleasant.
Yeah.
But for that, the scene where you see the bullet go through the peephole, that was a giant model bullet he made and a giant tunnel, like cross section. They just fired it through. Yeah.
The man does not know what to do with money.
Yeah.
A giant bullet!
Yeah.
Well, Daria, maybe. There are other things we could do with money.
We've not finished the plot.
Yeah. We've still got that weird scene with all lizards. Maybe you can rewrite that one. That's so funny. He's just
Wow,
is
that's
something.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it was like a giant bullet, basically. And
Giant
was that shot in slow-mo? Or did you just like slowly push the bullet?
No, I believe I was shot in slow-mo, yeah, so he like propelled this thing through.
How giant are we talking?
I think I was watching,
details.
it's on the interview on the Blu-ray of this, and he sat there just very matter-of-factly going, we made a massive bullet that was this size, maybe this size.
Wow.
And yeah, I think it was just over a metre or something like that.
I was kind of hoping larger than him. That's still pretty large.
I think it's bigger than it needed to be.
Yeah.
To get that shot.
Larger than him is really
It's just very funny.
Why?
Like pushing the bullet. Oh man.
Yeah, it's a real case of him just sort of playing off his reputation. Because apparently this film was all shot in complete secrecy, and they would have fans outside the locations they knew he was in, sort of clamoring up like, oh, Argento, what's this one about? Who's the killer in this one? And I love the idea of people watching, original Giallo and then getting this immense, absolutely crazy, It's got homage to Giallo, but I don't really know what this is.
I love it.
But it was heavily cut when it first came out because it is really
Shock.
violent even for Argento, as it was Tenebrae. With there's a scene in that where a character's arm is removed and she sort of walks around for maybe 5 minutes, or not 5 minutes, 5 seconds, painting most of the room she's in. It's awful, but it was cut and banned by the British government under the Video Nasties Act.
Right.
Then this one he showed at a festival in Turin, I think it was, and he heard rumours they were going to cut it. So he went into the projection booth, he stole the film canister that was meant to be getting sent out and kept it in his house, then gave it to a film museum in Italy, and when it came to them doing the remaster, the 2K remaster of this, he went, oh yeah, they've got that, we can use the fully uncut version.
Oh my god.
So that's the only reason that the actually properly uncut
So,
version exists.
right. So did the film did get a release at the time though?
The film got a release
cut
at the
version.
time, but yes, I think such as the wardrobe assistant's death, I believe that was cut.
Really?
Unsurprisingly.
Yeah. So,
But you don't actually see any of it, really, do you?
Do you know
which is a bit.
When you like
Yeah.
cuts though, it says it's, you don't see that.
I think it's just the sound design and the fact you see the killer's hands go into her chest or stomach. Or
But you don't actually see
something,
that,
or
do
throat.
You don't see it, yeah. I
Yeah.
guess it's the implication,
I
right?
think the implication was strong enough for that.
Yeah.
point
I feel like there's worse deaths
Yeah.
though.
It was the bit where,
Yeah.
with the first guy, where you could see the knife like in his mouth.
Yeah, that
like
was horrible.
Yeah.
What death were they? What was the griminess, do you think, in this one?
Oh, the mouth is definitely a way to start things
Yeah.
off in this. And I think
Shooting through the eye.
Oh yeah, the raven.
The raven pecking the eye
the
out.
raven, and then there's that shot of the bird bouncing around with the eye in its mouth. But the camera just stays on for way too long.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really proud of that shot.
Yeah.
I did think the ravens were a cool motif though, actually. Like, there's something quite
Yeah.
the core
Yeah.
and
Nice.
it's just quite like, I don't know.
Argento has always said Edgar Allan Poe
Mm.
was a massive influence on him, and in the interview again, he does just come up for one point. Yeah, it's The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. So, yeah, it's him really paying homage to his sort of gothic horror roots, and then Phantom of the Opera again, gothic horror. So it's
Yeah.
shoving a lot of elements into the Giallo sort of construct. But there was an interesting thing I was reading, because you were saying about a lot of use of POV in this, and every time you see a killer's hands, like in the black gloves in those shots, that's Dario Argento. Because he used the actors for the first couple, and I think he got Cat and Nine Tails, which is then his third film, I believe, and he was complaining, because his dad, Salvatore Argento, produced his films, and he was going to him, it just never looks right, they don't do exactly what I want. And
That
so,
thing's not good enough.
and so,
I'll just do it.
exactly, so yeah, he just, since then, he just took over.
He just
and-
does it, that's fantastic. I also have this amazing image of now of the behind the scenes of the costume woman who's like, oh! And Dario's just like, probably doing it too much is why
Yeah.
she's getting such a big reaction.
Wait, why is actors hate him?
Yeah. That is meta as well. Another layer to the,
Well, again, going off a metafiction element, so Dario Nicoli was in Tenebrae as well, and at the time they were shooting that, there was a serial killer in the area of Italy they were in, who was described for having a religious badge that they always wore, like from eyewitness scene. I think it was a necklace, yeah. And Argento was the only person that Nicoli knew, and she'd sort of been joking with him, saying like, oh, you're a serial killer, and that came out, and apparently she was just like, are you a serial killer? Having seen those films, so I think that's why we get such a meta period in his filmmaking.
some time for reflection.
Well, hopefully he's not a
Did they
serial
ever-
killer of
Did
the
they ever
series.
solve that one? No.
I believe they did, but I don't think it was him, yeah.
Okay, well, that's good, I guess. Oh, no.
The series might age really badly if that comes out.
Yes, that's true. Oh wow, who knows? Cool. Any probably need to wrap up.
Yes.
Any more remarks?
Well, I'd be interested to know where this sits in your Giallo rankings.
So I've actually missed 2 of them.
You've missed your
So
you hosted
Your
a lot
Voice
from
and
Kid
Suspiria.
and
That one. Yeah, thank you.
I've made it every Giallo episode. And Suspiria. So of the 4 you've seen.
I don't know. I think What Have You Done to Solange, or Solange, however you say it, is my favourite.
Yeah.
And then I liked Blood and Black Lace. Then which other one have I seen? Deep Red.
Deep Red in this one.
I actually think I probably prefer Deep Red to this one as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
Deep
that's-
Red and then this. I think.
Opera.
Opera, yeah. Bottom of the pile.
Yeah, I can see that.
What about you?
I actually, well, so I mean, top I think at the end is probably Suspiria. I mean, this wasn't going to be top up like this, realistically. Oh no! I think actually I do think I preferred. It's really a toss up between that and Solange actually. I think because last week I said Solange actually. But I don't know. I'll stick with Solange and then Suspiria, and then possibly Deep Red. Your Voice. Plum Black Lace, Opera probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about
That's
you,
interesting.
Patrick? Out of the series?
I would say Opera is probably bottom just because it's got a lot of great ideas. It's shot really nicely. I think the performances are for the most part good. There's just a lot of weirdness that feels a little bit unrefined. I think we used Hot Mess to describe Your Vice of the Locked Room.
Yeah.
That just, I think that fits to this film as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that actually. They feel similar in their
Yeah.
hot messiness.
So I would say Opera, Blood and Black Lace. I love what it did for the genre. I think it's a really interesting film by Mario Bava, but it's one that I think it's got less rewatchability than some of the rest of his films. So Blood and Black Lace, Your Vice, because I just respect the hell out of Sergio Martino for running with that. And I think it's a film that could have gone really bad, but it turns out pretty well in retrospect. Well, and then I think it would be Deep Red, Suspiria, and What Have You Done to Solange.
So we have the same. You know, as well.
So,
There you go. Wow. Cool. Well, I'll do it.
That's
Thanks for the series,
Yes,
Patrick.
thank
It's
you.
been many things. Entertaining,
Yeah.
fascinating,
I would
strange.
never have watched these films
Yeah.
ever, so
yeah, you've seen 4 of them, yeah.
yeah. I've
Yeah.
enjoyed some.
That was a shock.
Yeah.
No, it's been really good. Thank you for
Yes,
being
thank
here.
you.
Thank you for being here.
That's been great. Thank you for having me on. Yeah.
It's good. We'll get you back on at some point. So thank you for joining. We've got to 4 now, so
Oh.
got a lot of viewers. So we're going to be taking a 2-week break, but be sure to tune in again. We're doing memory and documentary. Something interesting with that, I'm sure. That's everything. This will be re-uploaded with full audio without those sweet 10 minutes of silence.
I was just going to say, if you have missed the rest of the series, all of Patrick's writing will still be on our website, and the podcasts are still on our YouTube channel. They're not going away, so you can catch up with it then.
Cool. But we'll see you in 2 weeks. I can't remember what the first film is, but we'll be here, so you know where we are. Bye.